everybody. Welcome to Mental Health Matters. This is Tom Duff, Executive Director of St. Louis Counseling. Check us out at stlouiscounseling.org for services, or if you want to be a sponsor of this podcast, go there too, and you can find Debbie Dugan, and you can talk to her, and you can figure out how to be a sponsor. So, as always, we have very interesting, entertaining, knowledgeable guests, and today is no different as we try to have some conversations about breaking down stigma, making mental health okay to talk about around the dinner table. So today we have Tom Satterly. Tom is first of all, author, all right? So he's written All Secure, a special operations soldier's fight to survive on the battlefield and the home front. He and his wife Jen are founders of the All Secure Foundation. So Tom is a former Green Beret, former Delta Force operator, fought in the Battle of Mogadishu, which was the basis of the movie Blackhawk Down, and so local as well too here in St. Louis. So welcome, Tom. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on.
Excellent. Well, and also let me say, first of all, thank you for your service, for our country, and then also thank you to your service to mental health, because you've come out and you've talked, right? And that's something that's really hard to do.
Yeah, that's tough. That was crossing that stigma barrier when I decided to was really tough. Expecting to get texts and phone calls from people from my unit, my former unit. We don't talk, especially about anything, and especially what you're talking about. And I would ask him, well, what is it I'm talking about? What is it the book's about? Because I get that. What are you, a Navy SEAL now, writing a book? I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, I get the jokes.
Yeah.
But what's the book about? And they couldn't tell me. They just
Ah.
assumed it was a book about me and look at me and look at all the stuff I did in the unit. So, the book is about mental health and how you get there and how you get out of it.
So when you, let me first say something. I've started reading the book, right? So right off the bat, I knew I was going to love this interview because you're from Seymour, Indiana originally, right?
Yes.
So I'm a big John Mellencamp fan.
Really?
So I saw
Wow.
Seymour, Indiana. I'm like, oh my God, that's like the Mecca, all right? I want to go. I've always wanted to go see the home of John Mellencamp. So I was pretty excited with that. So I know that's a tangent, but so you grew up Seymour, right?
I did, and I remember my great grandmother lived near the Mellencamps on a farm.
Really?
And I remember her complaining when I was a kid about that Mellencamp boy making noise and rude music, and I didn't know anything about it then. And then, of course, growing up, and he got big. My first wife's father installed satellite dishes when they were the big, huge 8-foot across satellite
Yeah,
dishes. And
yeah.
they were new, and I helped him install one at John Mellencamp's studio in Brown County.
Really?
And he called us in, and we listened to Little Pink Houses.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Some of the music on Little Pink Houses before he released it. I was like, that's cool, that's a good song. And then I still didn't really know.
Wow.
And those are the songs that came out.
Yeah,
On that
yeah,
thing,
amazing.
So pretty lucky to be there that day.
See, I'm one step closer to John Mellencamp now. Yeah.
He still lives there, I think. At least has a studio there.
Yeah, my brother had a Hurt So Good, right? And so I started singing Hurt So Good, and my mom heard that, and she's like, what are you singing? Stick your bones right, through, I'm like, and then all of a sudden he got in trouble. So he's always held that over my head, but no, that's cool. That's cool. So yeah, I saw that in the book, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be a good book right off the bat. So, so switching back, right? So, military, right? When did you know you wanted to go into the military to start with?
Funny. It was about an hour drive to Indianapolis to a John Cougar concert.
Oh, for
Yeah. My friend had joined the military. He had just gone off to basic after the summer of '85. He took off for basic and AIT. And I stayed, going to Indiana University and building houses. And I was just blowing my parents' money. He came back from AIT, and he was on his way to Germany for 2 years. And we were going to a John Cougar concert up in
Beautiful.
Indianapolis. Like an hour and a half drive. And on the way up, he's telling me all about it. Basics this, it's great. My haircut's okay. He had little stubbles on his head, and he said, "I'm going to Germany for 2 years. I've never been out of the country, and neither had I." And that drive up there to that concert, I decided to join the Army.
Wow.
And I was going to get in for 4 years, get college money, and get out, and go back to college and pay for it myself. And then that's when, in that first 3 years, everything changed for me. So decided to make it a career.
So looking back, in a career that not only went, just from basic training into special operations, and a lot of skill set that you're able to use for yourself as well afterwards, I imagine too.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. It was the regular Army was boring for me,
Mm-hmm.
too much of the same. And so in those 3 years, I got to go to French Commando School, German Ranger School, Platoon Confidence Training, which is run by Green Berets
Mm-hmm.
in Bad Tolz, Germany, and it was a lot of high speed, dangerous training. Training mitigates the risk, so it was easy when you do it. And everybody thinks it's really dangerous, but it's exciting and it's better than sitting in your office every day with nothing to do. And so that's when I decided to kind of just go the Green Beret route.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a bit of a struggle, but it was it was always climbing the corporate ladder, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to do what's best and you want to do what's fun, and that's all I was doing. Just I didn't have a path laid out in front of me. I just made it up as I went and found ways to get where I wanted to be.
So I love the concept of mental health, right? Because mental health, we all have physical health, we all have mental health, and then there's also mental illness, which is part of mental health. But we all have our own mental health. So being in the military, right, and that mental health component, the everyday ebb and flow that one experiences. When did you first started realizing like the level of stress and maybe that there was, an impact on your mental health? Was it at the very beginning when you started realizing like, okay, this is mentally tough, or did it progress over time?
Looking back, had I been trained on what to look for or what to expect, I would have said it happened very early on. It would have happened during the training. I had 2 years. I got into Delta, and I was there less than 2 years after signing up, making selection, and 6-month train up. Less than 2 years before we went to Somalia, and that training was rigorous. I'd also done some work down in Colombia,
Mm-hmm.
which was very stressful. And so it was a different stress than combat, which is what everybody thinks when you think of the war. You think of combat stress, but the stresses of the regular job of sneaking around in other countries and trying to get things done without getting caught,
Mm-hmm.
while you're saying you're somebody else is very, very stressful.
Yeah.
And looking back now, with what I know now, I would have known that it affected me early on. But
Mm-hmm.
what I thought of at the time was it was part of the culture. It's just
Mm-hmm.
what we do. It's just you keep striving to be better. You keep working harder, and you don't go home as much, and you stay at work, and you get things done. So tomorrow you have more to build on,
Mm-hmm.
and then you build up that next day, and then tomorrow I have more to build on. And so that was destroying me. That need to be better,
Mm-hmm.
that need to do more was destroying everything else in my life, minus my job.
Mm-hmm.
So I was good at what I did when I was at work.
Mm-hmm.
But going home, I was suffering and struggling pretty early on.
So when you look at that now, is that still kind of geared that way, or has military or maybe different branches done a better job at trying to bring that awareness to individuals?
No, we found that because we speak to active duty soldiers now.
Uh-huh.
We just got back from Fort Bragg and spoke to about 500 active duty soldiers who are in different phases of their lives. Some of them, they're from the X-ray program, which means you can join the military,
Mm-hmm.
and within 2 years you're going to go to basic AIT jump school, primary leadership development course. You're going to go to Fort Bragg and do the selection, the Green Beret selection,
Mm-hmm.
and then next you're going to go do the 3 or different phases of the train up, which is between 6 months and 2 years, depending on what job you go for, and then language school, 4 to 6 months, depending on what language you try to take. And that in itself is the stressfulness. But we talk to those new soldiers now about what to expect, and none of them have had that from anyone else.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
The reality of it, because it's bad for recruiting if you think about it.
True.
A lot of times I go in and I'm telling these guys, even last Monday, I'm telling like the 500 guys, it's going to destroy you, it's going to hurt you, it's going to wreck your family unless you focus on it. And I know you're sitting there thinking, whatever, you're full of testosterone, you're just raring to go like I was.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I wouldn't have listened to you back then either,
Mm-hmm.
But at least you have the tools in your tool bag to pull out when you need them, because you will need them along the way. And every one of them tells us, the new ones and the ones that get out that talk to us, there's still nothing set in place that addresses the reality of it. They're all afraid of it because of the stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to address when you say mental health, people immediately think mental illness.
Yep.
Something's
exactly.
wrong with me,
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying, oh, your arm's broken. Well, I need to get to work on my arm then and fix it, go through therapy and fix my arm. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't seem to be okay to do it for your brain for some reason.
Well, and we have done some at the agency. We've done some training with National Guard. So they would get sent to. We'd go out there to Jefferson Barracks, and we would do some just stress 101, stigma, and have those brief conversations for some guys that might have been needing a little bit more support, right? And so the number one thing I would always hear from them is like, well, I'm not going to talk about that because I want a promotion. So I'm not going to talk about everything going on. So that culture, when we talk about culture, right? It's like you said, that mental, if you say mental health, then it's kind of going to raise a little flag, maybe like, we don't know if you're ready for the promotion type of thing.
Oh yeah, they look at it like a chink in their armor when, honestly, if I see a new set of armor, I like the visuals. For a lot of people, they're like, oh, it's a chink in my armor. I don't want to admit that I have, an issue. Well, chinks in your armor mean you've been through things, right? Brand new armor means you've done nothing other than put on the armor. Multiple chinks in your armor mean you've been to battle for different reasons, and you've won and recovered. And we don't learn anything unless we go through adversity, really, and we learn how to tackle it differently and better. So failing, we always get better when we fail. If we stop when we fail, then we go no further. So it's the same thing with mental health and physical health and everything that we do. We're okay at it, but we practice, we get better at it. And it's the same thing with mental health.
So let's talk about All Secure Foundation, right? So you and your wife co-founded that, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, when we started, it was difficult for my wife to find help for me. Moving to St. Louis, it's not a big military town, and she wasn't military at all, so she's looking for ways to find me different help. It takes TRICARE, it'll take my insurance, which is a difficult feat in itself. And she realized that it was so difficult that people would give up. And so she said, we need to do a foundation. We're working together, training special operations, and she was doing the video shooting of them for a couple of years. And everybody that was talking to her had the same issues. I have trouble with my family life. I want a better relationship with my spouse. I'm always angry at holidays. I ruin all the holidays, and I don't know why. I don't want to, and I have these anger outbursts. She's like, yep, sounds familiar. So we put together a list of resources on our website and started building the foundation just to offer people an easy location to find everything at one stop. And then we kind of morphed into not counseling, but coaching, I guess, if you will, retraining.
Yeah.
We decided to run couples retreats. I think we're running 8 this year for up to 12 different couples in different locations. It's a 4-day retreat, and it's all paid for the veteran and their spouse. But we wanted to not just send a veteran to Disney or send a veteran on a hunting trip, which all those are great, but we wanted to tackle the family issue and actually do some training and give them tools to take home and practice with their relationship and at home. And oh, by the way, recognizing the triggers of PTS and what that looks like. And that kind of grew pretty fast. And now we've morphed into doing that and added active duty, service members early on, or at any stage in their career, really. We're doing high level active duty leadership and special forces coming up this fall. So that'll trickle down. We're also at the grassroots teaching everyone so it works its way up. So we're tackling on both ends and trying to remove the stigma of mental illness and saying it's just retraining. It's all muscle memory, the way we look at it. If you're good at shooting, it's because you practice it so much you don't think about it anymore. You just do it. Same thing with mental health. We want to rewire your brain, give you different pathways. Whenever you start to, say, turn into aggression or anger, we change that pattern. We try to tell them, hey, turn it into a joke. Start telling jokes right then. Just break that cycle, change the pattern, because once they would say something horrible, I know once I would say something horrible, I'm in that shame cycle. Now I feel horrible. Now I'm sorry again. And sorry is a horrible word to use. So, we stop using sorry. Now we're embarrassed when we mess up. So we just kind of run off and hide. And these warriors are trained to remove problems or fix them. And if they can't fix them, they can't fix themselves. And sometimes they remove themselves. And that's that horrible statistic we have nowadays.
Yeah. And unfortunately that keeps rising. That keeps, and I was surprised, because we've been kind of on a mission as well too to try to get more involved with the VA. We're doing some stuff with Kauffman Foundation. We're getting some outside grants to help veterans and their families, because a lot of times that family component, there's not funding for that, or the insurance will only help the veteran and not the family for the family counseling part of it. And that's the support system, right?
Exactly.
And that's not what's getting the help. So kudos to you guys for taking command of that and going with that.
Yeah, thanks. It's and my wife's even starting another nonprofit called Virago. It's on the we have a website on the internet now that's attached to our page at All Secure Foundation. But women of spouses, because it's nowadays spouses could be male or female.
Yeah.
Because everyone's in the military now, different jobs. But It's just for female spouses of special operations veterans and warriors, because those women have a lot of difficulty reaching out because of their husband may find out, or their husband's command may hear about it. That's the fear. That's not been proven. That's the thing we tell ourselves. If I ask for help, then I'll lose my clearance, I won't get my job, and they'll be worried about me. I haven't seen that, you know, in the leadership that we've been talking to, but I know when I was in, and I hear it from people still, if I say something, they'll look at me as being weak. And that's what I use. Then let's work on that and strengthen it.
Yeah.
You know, let's strengthen it so you're not weak, if that's what you feel. And we'll make it better versus just giving up.
So for you, acknowledging that you were suffering of a mental health issue, a mental illness, PTS, right? The courage to come forward and talk. So I was thinking about this interview. I'm like, okay, here's a guy that had to do a lot of courageous things in his career in the military, right? And then what's the comparison and then actually coming out and saying like, yeah, I'm dealing with a mental illness, PTS. I'm dealing with, I mean, was that not just as hard, but it was probably hard on a different level, right?
Yeah, it was harder. It was hard at the time because I didn't know how to get better at it. I just knew I had it, and I knew it was an issue. And my wife had said, you've been at such a high level of leadership in a unit that people want to get into, that if you say it, people will follow. If you get on the dance floor first, people will come out and start following. So we chose to get on the dance floor first and start dancing, you know, and sharing our story and being as open as we could about it and real about it, and knowing that so many other people were going through the same things. But nobody wants to, because then then we're worried. We all worry about what people think about us, no matter what anybody says. We all worry about what people think about us, and including me. And it was tough, but you know, reading the book, you'll notice that my wife's the hero in the book, not me at all. And she's the one that pushed me, you know, and that's what leads us to, wow, it's the spouse that's there for you. You know, she's not messed up. She has secondary PTS, you know, from everything you brought home to her, as long as the children, but she's not in that place that you're in. They can see things. Because you'll hear everything from veterans like, my wife doesn't understand, I don't tell her anything. You know, she's the one you should talk to. She should be the closest one to you. Or you know, you need to go see a therapist. We have our own therapist. You can talk to her. Well, was she in war? Did she go to combat? Because she won't understand. And I'm like, well, did you go to college to study therapy? Because you won't understand what she's doing either. So you see how that doesn't really work. You're a specialist at your job. Let her be a specialist at her job. Because it's not understanding the story of how you got there. It's understanding of how you feel right now and how to get better there. We don't really spend a lot of time on the stories. Whether it's, you know, my buddies got blown up, or I got blown up, or I killed so many people, it doesn't matter. Doctors, you know, that lose people, or you know, or have stressful days at work, or CEOs go home and have the same issues and problems at home. It doesn't matter if you're a general or a private, or you're a CEO of your own company, or you work in the mailroom of that company. When you go home, you're somebody's spouse that just wants you to be present, love, and help out at home, and that's where we all kind of fail.
Well, and your wife, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, she was not she didn't grow up around the military. She wasn't all about the military. I think I read somewhere like she was like a self-proclaimed hippie or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it kind of shows you right there. Yeah, I mean, that's the opposite, right?
We were completely the opposite people in the world. I didn't, when I first met her, I didn't even lay eyes on her. I didn't even look at her. And I wasn't interested. I was pretty depressed anyway, but you know, I thought I need to be around a tough, strong, well, my version of tough and strong, and what that looked like. I would look at her and think, oh, she's too soft. She cares too much. You know, I had zero empathy back then. I figured if you had an issue in life, that was your fault, and get out of it. You know, until I needed to reach a hand out, and all she did was stick her hand out and pull me out of the hole. Yeah. I realized, wow, that's easy. It's really easy. We should try that with more people. And that's kind of what rolled into the foundation in the book. Was to reach as many people as possible, and hopefully a movie, you know, that will reach even more. And the story, if we have control of it, doesn't morph into a war story. Yeah, it stays a love story. Instead of a story about a soldier, it's a story about a person who just so happens to be a soldier that has issues. You know, it relates to so many different people. Yeah, I think that's, you know, like I said, I'm in the process of reading the book, and I even watched another one of your podcasts with somebody else, and the thing that I was getting from it was
that bond with you two, with you and your wife. That's what it's more about, and the recovery of it. And so to hear you say like, we're not focusing on all the exact specific stories. It's about how do we cope with it now.
Right.
So for you with PTS, how do you cope now? Like what's your regimen of dealing with that? Your maintenance of it.
The easiest thing I found to cope with it is I used to wake up in a horrible mood. Just I hated the day coming. I hated what I was going to have to do, whether it was fun or not. I just hated waking up. And I realized that I was pushing people away just with my body posture. I walk around just frowny cat all the time, and I didn't really realize it. To me, I think I'm smiling. This is smiling. And I realized that I wake up, and I practice it every day now. I just smile. I just start to smile no matter how I feel. I start to smile, and then say something nice versus something grumpy or considering something grumpy, because your thoughts become your words, become your actions. And I've learned that I'm taking myself down that path. I'm becoming a victim of my own identity. A lot of veterans, pain has a memory. We've all been in pain for a long time, and we've all been depressed, and it has a memory, and we identify with that. And that's who we are. That becomes our new identity. So we live with it, and we kind of miss it when it goes away. But you have to change that. So I even this morning I wake up and I just start to smile. And it's hard to be grumpy when you're smiling.
Yeah.
And I put into practice when I walk around now. I try to smile and just smile all the time. And then more people approach you, shake your hand, and say nice things versus they turn away. I'm like, wow, I was doing it myself. I was a billboard of stay away from me. So I started changing that, and everything around me changed, along with who I hang out with. You become like the top 10 people you hang around the most. And I was hanging around other depressed people, and we were all living together in our own misery. And I removed myself and hang around more prominent people, people that are happier and work, at a different pace in life with different mentalities. And I start becoming more like those people and emulating who you're around. And so it's just kind of that inward struggle of muscle memory, being grumpy all the time, walking in, and that chaotic children running through the house sets us into that, that biological response of I need to deal with this and get on top of it right now. And how do I do that? With violence and action and speed, and aggressiveness to get control of it. Because if not, everyone dies, right?
Yeah.
Well, not in the household.
Yeah.
So I have to break that habit of how I handle things and change it with, I'll get down on the floor at eye level with the children and joke with them, which is hard for a lot of veterans to do, because their whole life, everything was dealt with aggression and violence to fix things. So it's a tough break from that memory, that muscle memory that we do every day.
Do you think, I've often thought about how, like a lot of times I think we're just born wired in a certain way, like fight or flight, like and I know things shape you along the way, but sometimes I've thought about military, like if you're a person that was naturally wired for flight, right, and you decide to join the military because it's interesting to you, but you're actually wired for flight, that would create such a stressful internal battle, because you're being trained not for flight, it's for fight. And so, I mean, I don't know, I guess what's your opinion on that? And like, have you seen that?
Yeah, it's complete indoctrination. And they're taking thought away and replacing it with muscle memory. So you see a threat, you kill it. That's what you do. If there's a threat, you kill it. It's not even like law enforcement. You see a threat, drop it. You just do that, give directives. My training was look at hands. There's a weapon in the hand, you kill it, and then you move on. And so you end up with a lot of moral injury, right? Where you go in, you've been taught your whole life, turn the other cheek, thou shalt not kill, don't do this, don't do that. And then you go in, no matter who you are, fight or flight, or you're a fighter, and they show you how to be that fighter. And so just like moral injury, where you're doing something that you've been taught your whole life not to do, and they've removed the thought of it, you just do it, you still think about it later. When things slow down, you're like, wow, I killed several people today, or I've killed this many people over my lifetime. That hurts you, just like if you're trying to change, you're a person that likes to, freeze or flight. And you get past that with muscle memory, and you jump in and you do your job, and when you're done, a lot of them turn to the drinking. I mean, a lot of people brag about it. There's a lot of drinking in the military. I even saw an article this morning, a Marine talking about, you college kids have no idea when you wake up and you throw up and you're drunk all night and you drink. You have no idea. When I joined the Marines, nobody drinks like the Marines. I mean, it's almost like bragging about how they can outdrink people. And that's just to either not feel or to feel, depending on how you're affected. I drank to feel because it'd make me happy, but then, you take it over that. You're chasing that feeling, just like alcoholics chase that feeling. And then, of course, it doesn't work out when you're chasing it. You keep drinking. Next thing you know, you don't know what you're doing. And you wake up somewhere, you're like, all right, well, I'll never drink again.
Yeah.
Until 2 p.m. the next day, you're like, I feel better. I can't wait till 5 and have a drink, and then it starts over, and it's just that culture. But yeah, it definitely takes its toll, just like the moral injury does. If you're wired to be different, I don't know why people like that would have joined the military, other than that's their only option. Like my son joined the military. To me, I thought, that's not for you. It's not for you. I begged him to go to college, begged him to go. And if not, let's go down the military in this order, Coast Guard. That's great. That's a great job, hard to get into. Oh, then, by the way, let's try the Air Force. And if not, let's try the Navy. They have jobs. The military has jobs in them, but his thought was, I want to be a sniper. Like, man, that's a good hobby to have, maybe,
Yeah.
Well, I want to be a ranger. Again, that's a hobby. But when you get out and your skills are, I can carry a weapon and shoot people. If you retire, you're too old to be in law enforcement.
Yeah.
And if you get out early, that's about all you're going to be able to do with that skill. Guys go in and get out in 4 years, and like, I can't do anything. I don't know why people won't hire me. I was in the military. So what? You did 4 years of following people. People told you what to do, and you did it. You don't have a skill other than following people. You got to be a good follower before you can be a good leader. But coming out of the military and saying, I have great leadership skills, which a lot of people think, oh, you're military, you got leadership skills. Not mostly. Those leaders that have gone through those situations had to deal with family lives, family issues, work issues, manage people, retrain people, give them a second, third chance, and then get rid of them. If not, you haven't had leadership. So you're just getting out with zero skills. So hopefully you have college in mind, you've had a plan, and when they don't, that's when they get into that cycle of, what do I do? I have PTS, I'm miserable, I'm depressed. Well, take charge of your life like everyone else has to. You have to get up and start doing something towards a goal that you want to achieve, or you're going to go nowhere.
So does leadership, for you, was that kind of an inherent skill that you had, that you honed through time?
I definitely had to hone it. When I was young, when I joined the military, I was very young. And when I got to a leadership position, I was still young. In the regular army in Germany, I was now squad leader in charge of like 10 people. I might be 22, 21, 22. I'm in charge of 10 people in the army in Germany. Like, I don't know what to do. I'd yell at people. I led with fear. Guys didn't do what I wanted. I yelled at them. And I led with fear for a long time until I was a little more confident in my skills. And then I was surrounded by other leaders. In the unit, you're surrounded by other people who want to be there, who volunteered about 4 different times to go to 4 different locations to get there. And had to go through multiple selection processes and train-ups, and then psychological evaluations. So you're similar already. So leading people in the unit was easy, to an extent. Trying to lead stallions to go somewhere when they all have their own mind is difficult. But I'd rather have a pack of stallions and steer them than have a pack of mules and have to whip them to get going. But I honed it over time in Germany, dealing with privates with family issues, and they didn't want to work, they didn't want to be there, they weren't motivated. I found different ways to motivate people and get them to do the job I needed them to do through love versus, anger. And fear. So I stopped leading with fear and started leading with love, because then they follow you and do what you need to do even though you're not there, versus if you led with fear, they're only going to do what you need when you're there. And when you leave, they're going to talk bad about you and just slack off and do nothing. So
yeah, exactly.
I had to learn that over time.
So when you started recognizing symptoms of mental health, were you still active in, or was it after when you started really kind of realizing some of the impact?
Again, looking back, I had it when I was in. I didn't recognize it. I had my head down. I worked harder. Something's wrong. I work harder at it. No, I'll fix it. And again, you're surrounded by good people, so things you might drop the ball on are always picked up and worked at anyway. Looking back, I definitely know I had it when I was in, and it was affecting how I was as a leader. I didn't want to be at work anymore, but so I'm struggling with the fact that I have to go to work because I don't want to get fired or leave such a great job. That looks bad too. Where would I go? back to Special Forces and lead those guys. I hadn't done that job in years. You know, I was in a unit 20 years, so it's a different leadership. You know, I could have done it. I didn't have the confidence in myself back then. So I was afraid to leave the job. Didn't want to be there anymore. I was burnt out. I was tired. I think that was the start of the mental illness, doing something I didn't want to do anymore. But figuring that's all I had to do. That's all I could do.
No choices, no way out.
Yeah, and then getting out, 10 days after I retired, I had no plans, and I got a call from a friend of mine. Hey, I got a job in Jordan. You want a job in Jordan? So I packed up, moved to Mont Jordan, and lived there about 2 years, and was put in charge of a brand new program that had to stand up to train 100 Jordanian soldiers to be Special Forces qualified in 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And so I'd run 100 soldiers through this program. Of course, nobody wants them to fail. And their general fathers would come in and talk to me about, oh, you promoted that guy, or he won the best soldier, and but he's a you know, a Bosnian Jordanian, so he's not very good. You need to promote, you know, or my son needs to be. I'm like, okay, got it. I got to deal with this political.
Even
stuff.
Then, it's political. Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And so we ran that program for a while, but it's still like being in the military. I'm a civilian. I'm in charge of 10 other guys I hired that were all Special Forces qualified that were out. So I'm still doing that job, but I mean, we were drinking heavily, party hard, and work, you know, work hard, play hard, and it was tearing me down. I was making bad decisions. That job dried up, and I came back to the States, and all I did was, I mean, that's when it hit full on. I'd lay in bed and sleep all day, watch TV all night, you know, just drinking in my bedroom. I moved out of my bedroom. You know, my wife lived in because she worked all the time too. We didn't have a relationship, and my son and I couldn't really talk. I had been gone my whole life, his whole life, and so we didn't really know each other. And every time we tried, it just wasn't working out. And I wasn't in the shape to do it anyway, you know. And so we're still working on that relationship. But yeah, it really started to hit me after, when I didn't have that tribe I was in anymore, that purpose. No daily tasks, things to run. If I don't have a task list, and my wife knows this now too, get me going, give me a checklist. Slide it by my bed. I wake up, I look at it, I'm like, I'm getting to work.
Yeah.
I'm going to knock this out. And when I'm done, I'm done, and I'm happy. With nothing to do, I wander about the day like I feel worthless. Even to this day, if I'm not doing something, I still feel like I need to be. So I'm still working on that relaxing kind of thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, what gives you? So, like, you know, from your career, right? I mean, high intensity. You know, you're making this difference. You're changing thing. I mean, you're helping, right? So, how, you know, for the veterans that are out there that don't have that anymore, that I'm a part of this, like tribe, as you said. Like, how do you? What gives you that oomph and that energy, or do you have to go look for it?
You have to look for it. We built the foundation for something that we knew we wanted to do. And even as my wife built it over 2 years, you know, dumping all of our money into it, while I worked at the time still to make money so we could eat and pay bills, while she just struggled along trying to figure out how to build a website. And she was pretty good at that, but how to market it, get a lawyer to start legalizing everything and make it right. And then finally, just last year, towards the end of last year, I was able to go full time on the foundation.
Wow.
And both of us now, you know, taking on that job and doing it. It was just a passion that we wanted to do, and that's what we tell people. What is your passion? You know, some guys are like, I love music. I'd love to be a music teacher, but I thought the guys would make fun of me. It's like, really? You love music. You're passionate and good. You play 10 different instruments. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And he's doing it now, and he's helping out with veterans, teaching music and helping them with music and veterans. And so having that passion and drive, just like being part of a tribe where you're either told that what you need to do, or you know what you need to do, you know, or you're the person that starts that tribe up and has people that you help in that tribe, but you belong to something. You know, you're connected to people for a common cause, and that's what gives a lot of us a drive and a passion in life.
So you go out and find it, look for it, and use it. You're right. I mean, because I think a lot of people struggle. It's like, well, this is what I love doing. So it's like, can you imagine your job is actually love what you're doing? You know,
I've never been happier. Now, loving what I do, waking up, I'm like, wow, all right, what are we going to do today? I struggle for things to do. My wife's already up on a computer. I get out slowly because of my, 10 different back surgeries, and so I stretch a little bit. I'm like, all right, move into the kitchen. She's happy. She's banging away on the computer. I'm like, all right, do we have any book orders? We have shirt orders, hat orders. All right, I'm going to run to the post office, those menial jobs. And then, oh, by the way, let's set up another retreat. Let's find a location. call, set it up, price it, and then find it and fill it and then run it. And I mean, like I said, this year we're doing 8 different retreats, and we're doing 5 or 6 different resiliency training, we call it, for active duty, where we talk about PTS and how it will affect you and what to look for in your friends, so you can help them out. And then we're doing things like we're going to the White House to speak for the White House Communications Department.
Awesome.
And other corporations as well, like Lockheed Martin and things like that. So we're trying to get the word out a lot, as much on a different platform, because it pertains to everybody. It's not just for veterans.
So how does a couple get involved, or how does a couple be able to go to one of the retreats? What do they have to do, or where they find that information at?
Yeah, they could go to our website, allsecurefoundation.org, and go in there and send us on the info button, reach out to us and let us know, kind of tell us their story, and then we'll reach out to them and get their name, and we'll send them a document that they can fill out that'll let us know what stage of their marriage they're in, because we don't want to take people with the addiction issues. We don't want to take people who are on their way out of divorce. They're like, we're working on a divorce, or we're nearly divorced, but maybe. We want kind of like 1 to 10, 10 being divorce, 1 being best marriage ever. We wouldn't go above a 6 or 7, because you might need someone else first.
Yeah.
And if you have those addiction issues, we'll send you to another nonprofit like Warrior's Heart, that we have friends that started that up. Get rid of the addiction issues first. Okay, now let's work on this. It's several modalities that you have to go through to get healthy. I've gone through, well, I don't know how many I've gone through, different modalities to tackle my issues, to include 5 different therapists before we found the one that we thought worked.
Well, I think that's important too, what you say, because a lot of times people will try a therapist once. Okay, I tried therapy, it sucks.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, and so it's like finding that right match, right?
Right, you have to for everything you do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a personality thing. You have to find someone that doesn't judge you, understands. And we found one that gave us homework. The other therapist, okay, and an hour later, we're on our way home like, all right, I feel a little better, but we're going to go next week or next month. I mean, what do we do? We go back to the same patterns. The one we have now, who we actually hired for our foundation, she's
perfect.
Homework. So everything we do on our retreats is fun, activity-based. It's an immersion, and it's fun and it's experiential, but let's say while you're driving that golf cart through that beautiful path and through those caves and under those waterfalls with your spouse, you're going to be practicing these skills on 10 things I would like to hear from you. Here's 10 things I would like to say to you, and then vice versa, and we switch. And they're always doing things. They're always conducting the activities that will help them in a better relationship and improve their marriage while they're having fun. Then we'll go sit in the classroom and talk about it some more, and then we'll go out and do another activity where they have to practice that. So it's a fun weekend. It's a relaxing weekend. We have them go on date nights to reconnect while they're practicing something we gave them that day, and then come back and talk about it the next day. So we give them the homework to do, and then we'll follow them for a year as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Social media group where they can stay in contact with each other, talk about how they're doing, and they're practicing. And you'll see those jokes, oh, the story I'm telling myself is my husband doesn't do this or that, versus you don't do this or that. We talk about how you say, well, this is the story I'm telling myself. Different ways to approach what you want to work on versus accusatory, because that always sets people off.
Yeah,
it's
it's already a conflict when you come across that way.
Stay away from those nuclear buttons that everyone has on each other. Oh yeah, well, you act like your mother.
Exactly.
Now we know we're fighting, right?
Exactly. Never say the mom. Yeah.
I know how to get to her, and she definitely knows how to get to me. So we stay away from those.
The beauty of being married, right? You know each other that well.
Right.
Wow. Man, we could talk for hours. Well, I could talk. I could ask you questions for hours, but I mean, ultimately, you know what? I come back to what I said. One, I thank you for being a veteran and serving our country, right? But also for being this advocate now, on being someone who has lived this. We put special ops. We put someone like you on this pedestal, right? And for you to be able to come out and to be able to say, like, hey, I'm also dealing with this. I'm dealing with this mental health issue, and I'm also trying to have a stronger marriage. I mean, those are things that goes a long ways for the public, for our society. So I can't thank you enough for doing that, because ultimately, as we talk about this podcast a lot, we want to break down stigma. We want to make it okay to just talk about, and especially to our loved ones, right? Because those are the ones that sometimes we're supposed to put everything on the table, but we don't because we're also the most connected to.
Right.
So being able to find the avenues to do that. So you guys are doing some really cool work. So we have been with Tom Satterly, and him and his wife Jen have founded All Secure Foundation. And what's the website again?
allsecurefoundation.org.
allsecurefoundation.org. If you are curious about their services, and just reach out to them on that. And as always, this is St. Louis Counseling. Find us at stlouiscounseling.org. And Tom, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, take care. And until next time, this has been Mental Health Matters.
This has been Mental Health Matters with Tom Duff of St. Louis Counseling Services. Check out stlouiscounseling.org for more information.